Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of Monday Morning Directing. I'm your host, Hobo, and here with me today I have.
I go by Ricky now.
You go by Ricky now.
Yeah.
All right, we've got Ricky and Hobo here for you. And this is Monday Morning Directing, which is just a show where we're going to talk about some movies that we watched and how we would have done it a little bit differently if we had, the IP, if we had the ability to make a remake or something like that. Or if we could go back in time and redo the movie, that could be another thing too. And Ricky, what movie are we doing today?
We are doing the original 1984 Red Dawn, which was directed by John Milius.
I have no idea.
Milius, I think is how you say his last name. I don't fucking know.
I have no idea. We don't see. This is just a podcast where we're just going to talk about it and we're going to say what we would have done differently. But don't take our opinions any more seriously than you would take like your drunk Uncle Daryl at the bar talking about how the Patriots could have won the playoff game if they had done a little bit more passing or something like that.
Yes, so football joke. I understand.
Yeah. We know nothing about making movies. Neither of us have made a movie. This is a podcast about making movies from two people who don't know how to make movies. But I watch a lot of movies. You probably watch more movies than me, actually. So we just like movies.
Yep.
And we've got some opinions on Red Dawn, don't we?
Oh, yes, we do.
I know you in particular have some opinions on Red Dawn. So I think first off, I think we should just explain the premise of Red Dawn. So basically, Red Dawn is a movie, presumably set in the 80s, where you just got a bunch of high school kids in, I believe, Colorado. I'm actually not entirely
sure. Yeah, it is Colorado. I don't know. I think it's not Denver. It's just like a small town in Colorado.
Yeah, somewhere in like rural Colorado. Just a normal high school. Then the Russians invade. They invade the American mainland. They start taking over, and all these high school kids get together, and they become guerrilla fighters, and they fight off the Russians and win World War III.
Go Wolverines!
Wolverines! Yeah. I mean, that's honestly the most iconic part of this movie for sure is just, Wolverines! Yeah. Although for you, your version of the movie did not have the subtitles for the people speaking in Spanish and in Russian.
Yes. So I kind of just had to make it up.
Yeah. So that's kind of funny because I think the only time when they explain why they're called the Wolverines is when they're speaking in either Spanish or Russian. I can't remember which one.
Well, I mean, I know it's their school fucking like mascot.
Yeah.
So I realize that. Like, I think there's a line at the beginning of the movie. It's like they're talking about how they fucking just like lost a game like the week prior to.
Yeah. They point at the sign. Yeah. So I think before we talk about how we could improve the movie, we should talk about some of the movie's shortcomings, right? So I know you, for one, said that I remember you telling me that you thought that the pacing just went out the window about halfway through the movie, and I don't disagree.
Pretty much. It kind of just ended up stalling at the halfway mark for me, and I was not a fan of the whole jumping month by month thing.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, it seemed like they had all of these really cool action scenes, right?
Exactly. Like it's a bunch of cool clips strung together.
Yeah. And like basically after the opening, it's kind of just like it feels like a montage of just like things that these kids are doing as they're fighting the Russians, right? Like they attack like this armored column. There's that one scene where there's the Russian officer, which you didn't understand, but they go to the national park, right? And one of the younger Russian officers or like the older Russian officer is like, hey, you study English, why don't you read this sign
Oh,
for
doesn't
us,
he
right?
totally fucking misread that?
He misreads it completely, and he's like, this is where there was like a rebellion of American Indians, and they rose up, and Teddy Roosevelt went and crushed them. And it's like, the imperialist Teddy Roosevelt crushed
Yeah.
the peasant Indians and like all this, which was very funny. And then they get brutally murdered.
That
Like,
was a cool scene because it's showing them taking a photo and the Russian guy is like, it's fine. And then it goes to the shot of all of them behind the rocks, just
yeah,
watching them.
yeah. Like, I mean, and that's like a really cool scene, right? And there's a lot of scenes like that in this movie where there's just like a lot of really cool scenes that I feel like was a little bit. I I don't know anything about the production of this movie, but there is a part of me that feels just based on the end product that it was kind of like this thing where they recorded all of these scenes and like the producer or the editor or whoever it was like, well, these scenes are all really cool. We want to keep them all in, so let's just cut out like all of the establishing story parts. Um, and so it felt like they kind of wanted to pack all of these really cool things into this movie. But then they ended up like kind of making it like a weird action scene montage compilation video rather than like a more cohesive story.
Yeah. Did you know that this movie was reportedly based on Hitler's proposed plan to invade the US?
I did not know that.
Yep.
That's, I mean, that doesn't surprise me actually. Yeah, I mean, although I think they ended up taking some things from the Russian invasion of Afghanistan when they talked about how like they disguised paratroopers as passenger jets and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which is pretty interesting. Um, and so, but yeah, that actually adds up. Um, and to me, speaking of Hitler, to me, Red Dawn kind of feels like a uh, the equivalent of like in Inglorious Bastards or a Django Unchained, where it's kind of like this super unrealistic revenge fantasy against like these terrible people, right?
Yeah.
Where like Inglorious Bastards, right? They just absolutely annihilate so many Nazis, right? And it's so fun to watch because they're annihilating Nazis. Even though it's kind of Inglorious Bastards is a little bit different because the story is actually a little bit better, but like it's still not like it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's just kind of it's fun. That's the same way I kind of view Red Dawn. Is it's the same kind of thing where it's just like, yeah, let's kill the Russians because the Russians are bad and Wolverines, you know what I mean? Um, but yeah, we do have opinions on what we would have done differently, how the movie could have been better if we were in charge. Um, and I think that you had said before that you thought that Red Dawn would work really well as a TV series instead of a movie, right?
Yes, because then we don't need the time skips. We can get to know these characters better. You
Mm.
know, I would always think that like maybe the first couple episodes, like the invasion doesn't even happen within those first like two episodes because we're just getting to know the characters, right? Something like that.
Okay.
Invasion comes, then it chronicles their journey moving from place to place, and then eventually, uh,
Yeah.
sabotaging the Soviets.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. And I also think that you could have all of those same cool action scenes, right, and just have them like as a part of different episodes. Like I was kind of thinking of that as I was watching the movies last night. I was like, man, yeah, like if each of these scenes was like a different episode in a TV show, that could be pretty good. Um, and so you have the one episode where they're being attacked by helicopters, and there's the one where they free the POW camp and like all this other stuff. Um, yeah, I think that could be interesting. Um, Now, what I thought was, I don't necessarily agree with you that they should have had like an establishing thing in the high school, because I feel like that high school thing was really more to just establish like um, these are normal people, and then the story really is just talking about like what they do once they're in that scenario, right? That the high school thing just sets up the scenario. Like the Russians invade, it's very sudden, and it kind of captures that emotion of like, oh wow, what's happening?
It
Like
just
they're
happened.
freaking out.
Like you're as lost as what like the kids, right? Like
Yeah,
this shit just
exactly.
like happened. Yeah, I mean, I can see that as well, but I do
Yeah,
think like I don't know, some of the characters were underdeveloped. A couple
for
of them
sure,
I had no clue who they were.
for sure.
Um,
Um,
oh, I don't know if this is a great transition. It's not the best transition, but you know, Leia Thompson.
yeah,
Yeah, she has that romance with that weird, like 40-year-old, like
yeah. I was
military
that made me
guy.
a bit
I was
uncomfortable.
like, what is this? And
Yeah, I was like, man,
apparently, they cut out a love scene between her and Power Booth is the name I think of the guy who
is it?
played the the pilot.
Yeah, no,
And
that
I
was
was
the
like,
right call.
gee,
That
yeah,
was
that
the
was the
right
right
call.
call. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that I was a bit like, man, she's like 16, you're married. It's like, ooh, that's a bit of a yikes. Um, yeah. And I cannot remember the name of the other actress, the other girl that's the part of the Wolverine.
Tony,
She's
fuck
Tony,
up.
yes.
Um,
When Tony like has like the thing with Jed, like they don't really set up the romance between Tony and Jed until right before she dies, right? And it's
I
kind of
don't
like,
think it was a romance between Tony and Jed at all, actually.
that's what I mean. That's the vibe I got, was that it was kind of like the weird, like flirty kind of like, you know,
I mean, I just thought that she was. I didn't really see any romances other than Leia Thompson and then
right?
Powers Booth.
Yeah,
Um, Tony's death was good. I liked it. I thought that was done well.
yeah.
Um, one death I didn't like was what's his face? The
Robert.
guy whose father ends
Yeah,
up
Robert.
being killed, and he's
Yeah,
like,
when
yeah,
he's shot down by the helicopters.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
he just like gives up, and it just starts like trying to like John Rambo the helicopter down or something.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah,
was like, what was your plan there? Like,
yeah. I felt like that was a little bit of a wasted potential.
yeah, that was kind of like, eh.
Um, yeah. So, um, now what I think I would have done, right? I'm just going to go through what I would have done, I guess, like chronologically as the movie progresses. Um, is I figure the movie opens, right? You keep basically the opening, right? It's a normal school day. Boom, the Russians attack. You like I like to think that like up until the Russians attack, if you just wandered into the theater and sat down at this movie, you wouldn't realize that it was an action movie until like the Russians
Yeah.
just show up, right? Um, and
I do still think okay, maybe me saying like 2 episodes of backstory. Yeah, okay, maybe that's like not necessary. Maybe like an episode to like maybe like 30 to like 40 minutes of just
see,
pure
okay,
like exposition as a TV show, not in movie form. That wouldn't work.
I disagree with this, and I'll go into it a little bit later. So what I would really want to see is they do a fairly good job of this in the movie, but I would really want them to emphasize like the characters are panicking, right? They're freaking out, they don't know what to do, right? Um, and you know, and they kind of do a good job that like most of them are kind of freaking out, but Jed is the one who's like able to like he steps up, you know what I mean? Like he takes a deep breath and he's like able to actually analyze the situation somewhat, even though he's still obviously very scared, right?
Dude,
Um,
Swayze fucking kills it in the movie. He's so
Swayze does a
good.
really good job. Yeah, I think that
Sheen Sheen a little less so, in my opinion.
yeah, I think Charlie Sheen's character doesn't really get a lot of like screen time to actually do stuff. Um, and you know, it's a bit, yeah, I don't know. The movie has a lot of like really minor characters who show up in like one scene that are like just really not great acting. You know what I mean? And the dialogue isn't written too great either.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but yeah, and so I mean, those are like things that I guess can't be helped from a. I guess if you are like the person who's like the producer, the director, whoever's in charge of the movie, right? That can't really be helped. That's just you got a budget, hire whoever you can get, and put a little inexperienced actors, give them a little bit of work. They can't all just be waiters. Anywho, but yeah, so but what I would do is right. So they all get into the mountains, And by the time they get into the mountains, right, there's just like a random amount of characters, right? But what I would do is instead of spending the time at the high school to introduce the characters, I would make it so
that also works. Yes, I
yeah,
know what you're saying. Like we start off not knowing anything about them, and then we learn as like
yes.
yeah, okay, yeah, I can also see that working.
And I figure like you could also have like I mean maybe a couple flashbacks for Jed and I cannot remember Charlie Sheen's character.
Uh,
Patrick Swayze and
Mi-
Charlie Sheen. That's
Mini
you know
Jed Matt
Matt.
Eckert.
That's his name. Yes, thank you. But yeah, like have Jed and Matt. Like maybe they have flashbacks of them like hunting with their father in the woods or whatever, instead of them just saying like, yeah, we hunted in these woods before, and like But the key thing that I would do differently is I would have Danny be the main character instead of
Which one was Danny?
Danny he's the last guy who survives. He's kind of in the background of almost.
Oh yeah,
everything
he
that the
does.
Wolverines are in.
Him and Leia Thompson are technically the only ones. Well, to survive.
Yeah.
Swayze. I think Swayze
No,
got
I think
shot.
he's dead. Yeah, I think he's dead.
Sheen, I think straight up is dead by the
Yeah,
movie.
he's
At the end of
dead.
the movie, he's carrying his
Basically,
brother and shit.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone else is dead except for the two of them.
Yeah,
Jed is a little bit like they don't actually show him dying, but it's he's dead.
yeah, he's dead.
And but yeah, but he's the only guy who survives, right? Which is why I think he should probably. Well, that's part of the reason why I think he should be the main character. But like when they first get up to the mountain, right? It's Danny and Daryl are the two people who like want to leave, right? Daryl's like, he's kind of like the villain within the Wolverines, or not the villain, but he's like
Daryl was like, okay, so he's apparently like school president and his dad's the mayor, right?
Yeah,
So
which is
like,
very 80s.
Yeah, yes, that is a very 80s thing. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna take in charge. And then Swayze just like fucking makes him the biggest beta ever.
Down. Yeah. Yeah.
And then he's kind of just like sulking, just being around. And then I guess it's a good transition to say that, okay, later on, he just ends up betraying the Wolverines. He goes into town to see his father. His father turns him in, I think. I don't know if he knew his father was going to turn him in. They don't really explain that, but he gets bugged.
What happens? Well, he gets caught when he goes into town, and then the mayor, his dad, is like, my son wouldn't do this thing, just bug him and then let him go. You know what I mean? He'll help you guys.
Yeah.
Even though I think Daryl was like, he was scared, and I don't think that he was really like on board with it all the way. But it's like, but I would have Danny be the main character because like basically Daryl wants to go because he's the posh boy, class president, whatever. His dad's the mayor. But Danny wants to go because he's like, man, we can't survive out here without things. Like we need food. We need, and he's not accustomed to like the rugged way of life that they're going to have to live. Right. And so what I would really want the movie to focus on is Danny's transition from being that guy to being like a scared kid who's like not sure what's going on to becoming like the hardened survivalist person who's able to like fend for himself and is able to, do that kind of thing. And so like while all of the other Wolverines die, right, maybe Danny goes on and he becomes like this hero to the Resistance later on after, the events of the movie. I think that would be really interesting. And so like, I would have like the beginning part of the movie be a lot of them like just trying to survive in the mountains, right? And there's the scene where the two brothers and Robert, they kill the deer and they have Robert drink the deer blood.
Yeah.
Right. What I would have done in this scenario is I would have had Danny be the person to drink the blood as kind of like this symbolic initiation into like he's leaving his old life behind and he's becoming a Wolverine.
Because what would be cool to see is we see Robert, like we kind of indirectly see Robert becoming more and more cruel and more like violent.
Yes.
Right. But it's not in the forefront. Like it's in the background.
No, yeah.
And then slowly more and more of the Wolverines realize what's happening to Robert, right?
Yep.
And then I guess we could talk about Daryl's death scene.
Well, I'm going to get to that in just
you're going to get to that? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, continue.
So what I figure is like they go to town, right, after they've been living in the woods for a little bit, right? And then they see all of the bad things that the Russians are doing, right? It's totalitarian. I mean, it's the Soviet Union, right? People in the re-education camps, they see all of that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then I kind of like this because technically they're wanted, right?
Yep.
Even though they haven't done anything, right? So I kind of want there to be this moment of like Patrick Swayze sitting down all of the other guys and being like, they want to call us rebels and let's be rebels, right? And kind of like have this moment where they're like, and that's when like they take up the moniker of the Wolverines, and that's when they decide that they're going to fight.
Yeah,
Um,
that's some shit like probably that should have been in the trailer. That's
yeah,
gonna be they want us to call us rebels, then we'll be rebels. And then
yeah,
like fucking
exactly.
some music starts kicking on and it shows them all gearing up.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but what I would do, I would cut out the entire pilot subplot entirely.
It
I don't
was
think he
kind of
has
like
anything.
out, it was kind of random.
Yeah,
So
I don't. I mean, I mean, I understand kind of why he's there. He gives a little bit of exposition as to like what's going on in the world aside from them, but I don't think it's that important.
apparently the pilot character was supposed to be like anti-war and a rightist, and he was going to be like the voice of reason.
Mm,
But the director apparently cut like a lot of emotion from a lot of the characters in the movie.
yeah, you kind of get that sense that like a lot of the characters are kind of like they're emotionless until like a very specific moment, and then like it's kind of out of nowhere. Um, like uh actually what I'm about to get to is when Daryl dies, right? When they kill Daryl, they tie up this Russian special forces guy. They realize
real,
that Daryl,
real quick, did you notice the line? The Russian guy shouts out Geneva Convention, and
yeah,
then
haven't heard of it.
Swayze is like Geneva Convention. I've never heard of it, and then he
It's
fucking
so
like
good.
shoots him. I'm like, that was
Yeah,
fucking funny.
yeah, that like but the thing about that scene is that like um
It's fucking
it's weird
robbery.
because because it's actually Charlie Sheen's character Matt, Jed's brother. That's like, what are we doing here? Like you're gonna like kill. He's one of us, right? Like we
Yeah,
just like I mean, because I mean, technically speaking, the Russian soldier is right. They are committing war crimes right now. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, and you know, so I mean, like it's not like it's kind of messed up, right? It's kind of dark. um I mean, it's not framed that way in the movie, but like if you really think about it, like it's kind of like this guy was like one of them. He's been part of their group for a long time. They've, you know, maybe they've become like friends with him, although again that's not really shown in the movie. But like, you know, it it should to me it was kind of like it was like, man, like, because I mean rewatching it this time and really like thinking about it, it's like, man, Daryl, like, even though he's kind of like a jerk off, like he's not like an inherently bad person. You know what I mean? Like he's just kind of scared. You know what I mean? Like he's uh not willing to go through with all of the stuff because he's not like ready for it. You know what I mean? He doesn't have the resolve. Um, and so in my version, it wouldn't be Charlie Sheen's character that stands up because Matt kind of like it's kind of like out of nowhere. You know what I mean? That's the only time when he ever like shows any disagreement with Jed.
Yep.
Um, I would have it be Danny, right? Because Danny's, I mean, because even like when they're beating up the Russian before they find out that Daryl's bugged, Danny's like, "Hey, you're gonna hurt him, man!" Like, and they're like, "Good," right? And it's like, man, like he's a, you know, he's not the guy who organized this. You know what I mean? He's just a common foot soldier. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, sure, he might, you know, hate us, but it's like he's like as young as we are. He probably got drafted from the Soviet Union. You know what I mean? Um, and you know, I think that it would be kind of cool to see Danny be like, you know, Danny be the one that be like, what makes us any different from them if we just kill them like this? You know what I mean? Because you know they're the ones who like they went and they killed all of the civilians whenever the
Yeah,
Wolverines attack, all these
that's
other
what
things.
Sheen says. Like, what are them? It's like, what are us? Like, he says something like that.
Yeah, he's like, well, if we kill our own, and if we kill this unarmed prisoner, what makes us any different from them, right? And then Jed says it's because we live here, which is like, it, I mean, it's a kind of a quippy one liner, but it's like I would have liked it for it to be more like Jed kind of like has this moment of like, man, what are we doing? right? And then that's when Robert just shoots Daryl, because Robert, I think, really should have just been kind of like, he's overcome by hate. You know what I mean? Like he's fallen to the dark side, if you will. And in a relatable reason, you know what I mean? Like you get why he's so hateful, but it's like, it's like the line that the pilot says, it's like, all that hate's gonna burn you up, and he's like,
Yep.
keeps me warm. It's like, and and actually, because of Robert, being that hateful character, at the final battle, I guess, right, or that final mission that's just the two brothers. What I would have done is I would have had it be that like they give more stakes to that final mission, because maybe you could make it like they're trying to assassinate the Russian general that's been hunting them down and bug Daryl and whatever, or something like that. Just give them a reason, or add stakes to this, right? Versus them just like going on like this crazy like death mission for no reason, because I don't even know why. And I would have had it be the two brothers and Robert. I wouldn't have killed off Robert at the helicopter.
Yes,
attack.
Robert's death was weird. It should have been nowhere. Yeah, he shouldn't have died there. I think Tony dying there was fine. Yep. Robert should have died later.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And like I would have had it be that like Robert kind of has like this one redeeming act, right? Like maybe the brothers are like, oh no, we're not going to be able to make it to the general because all of these guys are coming. We're not going to be able to fight them off. Robert's like, you go. And Robert like, picks up like the Dushka or the RPK, he picks up a machine gun and then he goes Rambo and then he dies. Right.
Yeah.
Give him a little bit of a redeeming moment. And then, I think that the Cuban colonel guy is probably the best character in the movie.
You're gonna have to explain that entire like side plot to me, because again, right. I had zero subtitles, and I took Spanish 3 fucking sophomore year, I think. I also flunked my Spanish 2 final, so take away what you want from that.
Yeah. So I mean, I really like the Spanish or the Cuban colonel character because, at the beginning, he's kind of set up to be the villain, right? Or like the main villain. He's like part of the invading force. And like, he's the guy who, after the Wolverines end up killing a bunch of his men, he's like, okay, now we're going to kill civilians, right? But then as the movie goes on and as time goes on and he realizes that strategy isn't working, he's like, wait a minute, I used to be a rebel, right? I used to be like them. You kind of get the sense that he really does that. The reason why he does the civilian reprisal attacks is, I mean, even though it's still messed up and it's still evil, he does it because like he cares for his men, right? But it's kind of like this thing where he's like, man, I used to be a rebel, right? Like I know what it's like, and it's like, the Soviet general guy, he doesn't understand because he's kind of like the authority, and the Cuban's kind of like, man, like we're doing all of these attacks, and like it's just making them stronger, right? They're being emboldened to attack even more, right? And he's like, this isn't gonna work out. Like this is, I mean, because he's like, I've experienced guerrilla warfare and I've won through guerrilla warfare. This isn't a good idea. And like by the end, he becomes really disenfranchised with what the Soviets are doing, because he's like, man, I became communist so that I could like, liberate the poor. And, so because he thought that it was like the right thing to do. And like, he's looking around at all of the stuff that's going on. He's like, man, I've become the villain. And that's why there's that moment at the end where Patrick Swayze
where he doesn't shoot him. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just looks at him and he's like, man, I used to be like you. Like I was you. And he's like, what have I become? I've become the villain. Right.
I looked like good looking actor Patrick Swayze once.
Yeah. I was once a handsome young action star, but no longer. I am a balding, mustachioed action villain. Oh no. But yeah. So that's what. Is there anything else that you want to say that you would have done differently? What about your version of Red Dawn? What would that have looked like?
So I mean, with Okay. I want to talk quick about the scene where Jed and Matt see their father in the camp, right? Right.
Okay.
They have that good conversation. I thought it was good. And then
Right.
I think their father's like, okay, I taught you well. Just go on, live your lives, right? Because I didn't think
Yeah.
he was saying anything about like being a rebel, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember any dialogue. And then he screams, "Avenge me," which
Yes.
I was a little bit confused by that. I was like, didn't you just like tell them to like escape and like live their lives? Like, did I just
I
like
mean,
like read that entire scene? Like,
I don't know. You're kind of right. Like there was a little bit of mixed vibes. To me, it felt like he was kind of like, you have the skills that you can survive on your own. Do what you will. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah,
and kind of like, kind of like implying that like the Soviets are, because I think he probably knows the Soviets are going to come after them, right? They're going to have to fight. Um, and you know, um, but but yeah, I don't know. I actually didn't think about it like that, but yeah, maybe he was kind of um he was maybe that could have been interesting actually if he would have been like um don't avenge me, right? Don't seek vengeance, just go and live your lives and try to live peacefully, right? But then the brothers are like, they're kind of overcome with anger and they decide to fight anyways, maybe.
yeah. Um, do you think in that case, okay, so in the scenario that you proposed, which I like, is that Robert joins them for the final siege on that camp, right?
Right,
Do you
yeah.
think all three of them should still die?
Yes, I think so.
Not even like one of them survive, just all
I mean,
three die?
in my version, right, where Danny is the main character, right? Danny survives, and the reason why Danny is the main character is because he's the one who tells the tale of the Wolverines to like other rebel groups later on in the war.
Oh yeah,
right?
Leah Thompson starts narrating it towards the end.
Yes,
Yeah,
which was out of
yeah.
nowhere. Like maybe it could have been that like, I mean, I guess in my version, instead of Leah Thompson narrating, it would have been Danny narrating, and it would have been at the beginning and the end, right? At the beginning, he's like, it was just a normal day, and I forget the name of the town in Colorado, where we were just going to high school, and then everything changed, right? And then the movie goes, and at the end, he's the one who gives a speech about how like, these people gave their lives and whatever, and how these rebel groups, mostly children, went and won World War III single handedly. Again, very unrealistic, but it's kind of like that same like power fantasy thing that a lot of other action movies are.
What did you think about Aardvark dying?
Which one is Aardvark?
He's the kid who, as they're driving off from the high school, he sees his father
Oh yes,
get
right.
jumped.
And he dies with the tank. I don't know.
Yes. He kind of starts like getting this like he just can't take, he's like he almost gets shell shock kind of. Like
Yeah.
he can't take the noise anymore and he just runs for it. Forget how he ends up on the tank. He tries to do something.
He runs up on top of the tank of running after the pilot guy when he runs on top of the tank.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe they could have. I honestly, I kind of forgot that he was there.
Yes.
Like he is the most forgettable member of the Wolverines for sure. But I actually didn't get the kind of PTSD thing that you
They
said
did.
that you got.
I don't think they built up to it because he's like, because I think it's like Charlie Sheen that's holding him and Swayze like trying to pin him down. It's like, don't run for it.
Oh,
because
that's
he's like,
right.
I can't take it anymore.
Yes, that's right. Then maybe that could have been interesting if like, he's kind of like the guy who like breaks. You know what I mean? Like he cracks first. Like
But Daryl was the guy who breaks.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't have yeah, it's weird if it's
Daryl doesn't really break though. Daryl's like the Judas, you know what I mean? Like he betrays them.
Oh yeah.
Versus,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like maybe you have Aardvark be the guy who's like, I can't take it anymore, man. This is crazy. And then he, and he's, and I don't know, maybe give like a small scene to like indicate that he's not fully emotionally coping with the situation very well. And then like, maybe show him dying at one of the battles. It doesn't necessarily have to be the tank one, because again, I don't think the pilot's necessary. I would have cut out the pilot entirely.
Pilot was Yeah, I guess because they needed access to like information. Like, I think it was probably something in the script where it's like, okay, how the fuck would these kids know like the strategic points of this base? And they had to like write in a character to like give them that
I mean,
information.
honestly, all they need to do is they go to like random town members, right? And they you know um they're because that's one of the big things that the Cuban colonel guy talks about. He's like, we have to win hearts and minds. We can't like, we can't just reign through terror. We have to actually like show the people that we're on their side. So it could be like this thing where maybe they go to the town, right, and the people like aid the Wolverines by saying like, okay, this is what I saw, right? This is I saw them taking like this truck with a bunch of prisoners over here, and maybe something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
they
and yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you miss a whole lot when, you don't speak Spanish or Russian,
yeah, yeah,
in this
and the
movie.
version that you watch has no subtitles,
Yes.
which is very unfortunate.
Yes.
Yeah, but but yeah, like it's I like, and honestly, again, I think that it's kind of unfortunate because, in my opinion, the Cuban colonel, he's to me the best character in the movie. Because I mean, not necessarily because he's relatable, because he's still like a bad person. You know what I mean? He does bad things, but to be fair, so does the Wolverines. You know what I mean? The Wolverines aren't. They there's even that one scene after they're hiding on the rocks in the national park sign, like we talked about before.
Where Swayze
And
kills the guy in the car.
yeah, and like he looks him in the eyes and he still shoots him. I'm like, dang, that's kind of dark. You know
No,
what
he
I mean?
doesn't look, he turns away, remember? He
Well, the
turns his
guy
head.
turns away, yeah.
Yeah,
But
the
it's like,
guy turns away.
but there's that moment where they look each other in the eyes, and the guy turns away, and then Swayze
And
kills him.
you
I'm like,
kind of get
"Damn."
like a nice clear view, and you look at this guy, it's like, this guy's in his like early 20s.
Yeah,
Like, you're like, this
like
guy's just a few years
he's a
older
kid
than them.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's he's in that same situation. But then it's kind of weird that like that's not um I guess like that's not an emotional moment, because it's like that's kind of messed up. You know what I mean? Like that would mess you up. I mean, it would certainly mess me up. Uh, having to do that. Um, but yeah, but it's not really given a second thought. Partially because I think you're right that like the pacing kind of like they're like, okay, we got to get to the next action scene, right? They're trying to speed it along. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you what scene felt super out of place was like Charlie Sheen telling like Leia Thompson to like clean the dishes,
Yes.
which I'm like, okay, if you wanted to like put in an arc where he learns that is offensive towards women or something.
Well, I mean,
I don't know. Like I really don't know like what that was, because it's never referenced again.
Well, to me, it felt like he's kind of like, okay, get in the kitchen, woman, right? But then
Yeah.
it's only a little bit after that the girls actually join in the fighting, right? But yeah, I think they could have done a better job of kind of showing that, like, he kind of learns like, that women are just as good as men at killing Russians, I guess.
Yes. That's
yeah,
the morals that the Republicans want to instill in every American.
Yes, every man, woman, and child is equally skilled at killing Russians. I mean,
God.
and
this was a total like right wing, like.
Well, yes, but to be fair, America in 1984 was very
yes, it did it like under Reagan, like obviously the tensions rose back up again. Well, but I don't think America ever rose back to like the threat of like the 60s ever. Like actually, that was the closest, I think.
Here's a fun fact for you. In 1984, the same year that this movie was released, Reagan got reelected, and he won the electoral vote in every single state except for either Minnesota or Wisconsin, and that was the state where his opponent was from. It was the most one-sided presidential election ever.
Wait, did you say Michigan?
Or not Michigan? It was like Minnesota or Wisconsin. One of the two. But in 1984, Reagan won every state except for one. It was a complete and total like landslide. Like the country was very, the country was very right leaning, and I honestly don't think, like, I mean, it was definitely a very right-leaning movie. And, I mean, not to get too political with it, but it's like, it didn't seem ridiculously, right. I mean, there's obviously a bias there, but it's not like it doesn't feel completely like just like a propaganda film or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. It was definitely like one of those like, yeah, this could only be made in the 80s kind of movie.
Yes.
Like this
No,
does
for
not
sure.
work in the 90s. This doesn't work in the
Yeah.
70s. This works
It was,
specifically in this decade.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's less political and more that it's just a product of its time. You know what I mean? That's just how America was back then. I mean, to be fair, neither of us, full disclosure to anyone listening, the two of us were not born in the 80s. We do not know what the 80s was like. Actually, we don't even know what the 20th century was like. So
Yes, I am 20 and he is 19.
yeah, I mean, like, I suppose that dates us a little bit, I guess, but so we don't exactly. I mean, that's the thing about Red Dawn is that for me, and I think probably for you as well, is that like that's like a pretty good, I guess, time capsule of like what
Yep.
the American consciousness was like,
Yep,
and that's kind of interesting.
Yep, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Definitely like fear of the Soviets. Like, what are they doing? Like,
yeah. I mean, and the threat of World War III was still very real.
Yep.
And actually, speaking of that, right? Speaking of the fact that that's like a movie that can only be made in the 80s, if we were to like remake the movie today, right? Do you think that we'd be able to remake the movie today? Because I was thinking about it, and it's like, go ahead.
A couple things, right? So there's okay. So if you guys don't know, there's a 2012 Red Dawn remake with like Chris Hemsworth and Josh Peck from Drake and Josh in it as the two brothers. And that movie, I believe they sub in the Soviets for North Koreans.
Yeah.
But honestly, I don't really view the North Koreans as like that big of threats compared to what the Soviets were.
It's not even close.
Yeah,
like,
it's not even close.
Like the North Korea, if North Korea really wanted to start something, like they would not even be like they'd be wiped off of the face of the map. It would be ridiculous.
What I would do if I made this into a TV show again now,
right?
I would straight up just base this still in the 80s. Like I don't think I would make this modern whatsoever because I don't think it would be interesting modern. Yeah. I mean, you do lose a little bit of relatability by setting it in another decade. But realistically,
you say that, but then like our generation loves Stranger Things. You know what I mean? I don't think that it's actually that far of a stretch for you to set it in the 80s.
Yeah. You're right. There's been this whole wave of like 80s nostalgia in like the past decade. So I mean, it would still work. I think it would still work. Definitely make it a TV show again. Honestly, the only thing I would worry about is finding who the fuck would replace Swayze.
That's true.
Because he killed it in that movie. He totally just killed it.
Yeah, he did. I think if you're looking at acting, he does the best job in that film for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, like he does a very good job. And he does a very good job of kind of being like that. There's that line that I had to laugh out loud at when Daryl's like, "You're such a jock." It's like, and then he tries to fight him, and he just.
Did you see that Daryl fucking steps over the fire like in that fight? I'm like, was there like no like safety precautions there? Like Daryl could have just died right then and there. Like,
I have no idea. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But it's like, yeah, I mean, like, yeah, he is a jock, but it's like, he's kind of like I think he does a good job of kind of being that like all-American, like super, like, I don't even know what to call it, but he's like the super patriotic, like American survivalist, individualist, you know what I mean? Like there's all he needs is his revolver and the wilderness, and he can do anything, you know what I mean? And he does a really good job of that while still being like, a relatively down-to-earth character, because like he does a good job of kind of being like, he kind of shepherds all of like these kids who are like younger than him to kind of like, and he is like a very good like natural leader. I think
actually this movie was actually made by the Republican Party to bring awareness to Davy Crockett once again.
For a second, I thought you were being serious. I thought that you were going to drop another fun fact on me. Yeah.
Jed Eckert is the new Davy Crockett.
Yeah. Oh, that would actually in the 80s, like a young Patrick Swayze as Davy Crockett. I'd watch that movie.
Is it bad that I didn't know Patrick Swayze died till I saw the movie 50-50? Where there's a line where Seth Rogen finds out that Patrick Swayze died. And that's when I found out that Patrick Swayze died.
Of course. Because that's where you get your information from his movie.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that about wraps up all of the thoughts that we have on Red Dawn, right?
I think just one more point. The intro to the movie kind of reminded me a lot of the Cyberpunk 2020 manual, where it gives like a list of like years of like what like crazy shits happen. They're talking about like NATO being dissolved. I'm like, oh, holy fuck! Like, what am I getting into? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it because it's like it's very rapid fire and it doesn't really have a lot of relevance to the movie, but it does kind of give you that it kind of puts you in the mindset of like it's a super uncertain time, right? Like there's a lot of things going on and it doesn't look good. You know what I mean? Like it's some bad news for the free world. But yeah, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it because it's like it's kind of like a big information overload, but you know, from a world building perspective, because I think that's one of the things that Red Dawn kind of does kind of interestingly is it kind of establishes this really interesting scenario, right? Where you can really think like, you know, what would I do if the Russians invaded? You know what I mean? You know, it's the kind of movie like when you're in like for me when I was in like I think I first saw this movie when I was like 8th grade, and then I would be like, man, I wish the Russians would show up. I would be so good, and you know, and it's you know that kind of like stupid adolescent like thought that like I'm just like Patrick Swayze, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it does a really good job of kind of establishing that world that you can kind of get into. But yeah, I think that's our thoughts on Red Dawn. Again, don't take our opinions too seriously. We know nothing about movies. Well, I mean,
he says that, but my version would like win an Emmy because
no, yeah. But I don't know. We're just talking at this point, I guess. I don't really have an idea for an outro.
I will write. What the fuck do we say for an outro?
Keep on rocking in the free world and do.
Is that what they fucking say on the fucking radio? They say something. No. On the radio in Red Dawn, remember? It's like the chair is leaning. The chair is leaning. Like, and then there's like keep on keeping on in the new America.
That's it's really interesting that you brought that up because that's actually what they did with the French resistance in World War II. Is over the radio they would give like these weird cryptic messages, and it was actually code for resistance fighters for like you know, secret messages that like, you know, it'd be like Pierre has a long mustache, and like that meant that like the Nazis are doing patrols around Paris or something like that. Which is they don't really explain, but I thought that was a kind of interesting touch. Is just like a guy who's like really into history, and like I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah.
I just did a Nardwuar thing. That's what Nardwuar does. I've been watching a lot of Nardwuar interviews. I don't know. All right, so that's Red Dawn. Make sure that you subscribe to Monday Morning Directing on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify, on iTunes, everywhere you get your podcasts. Oh, wait a minute.
What the fuck? Do you hear that?
Yeah, I think there's like a helicopter above my house.
Shit, some jet doing flybys? The fuck?
Well, that's going to be a lot of background audio. We're going to have to stop recording. Wait a minute.
Is that a tank?
Oh.